Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, you all are having a wonderful day today. So, when it comes down to it, I saw this very interesting conversation that I kind of wanted to talk about on the Skip and Shannon Undisputed show. And I thought that I would review this little segment because I found it very particularly interesting. And of course, this segment is going to be talking about Mr. Tom Brady. And Tom Brady, of course, for those of you that don't know, he is a part of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers organization at this current moment in time. And I do believe that him and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers they did get eliminated by that of the LA Rams, I believe, this past Sunday. Very competitive game. In fact, actually, it almost ended up being another amazing comeback by Mr. Thomas Brady. But of course, when it comes down to it, the LA Rams, they were just a little bit too talented, in my opinion, for them. The defense was a little bit too good. And on top of that, let me give Matthew Stafford some credit. He actually showed up when he needed to. Now, do I think that, he's been forced to make any throws overall out of his comfort zone, at least very often? No, not necessarily. And could that show up in the Super Bowl? Because I do predict that the LA Rams will overall make the Super Bowl because I do believe that there's a decent chance that they'll beat the 49ers. It's very possible, especially if they face off against someone like that of the Kansas City Chiefs, which I predict, they will also make the Super Bowl, but we'll see. I don't know what happens. But anyways, when it comes down to it, the big question about Tom Brady is not only will he continue, overall his tenure and his, future overall with that of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, will he decide to retire? But another big question about Tom Brady is this. If he actually did retire this season, if he did retire overall after all of this, after, just this season, would Tom Brady be remembered as the GOAT or the greatest quarterback of all time? In my opinion, he certainly would be. I don't even think that it really is that debatable. Now, there is certain people that maybe from the 80s and 90s that believe personally that Joe Montana was greater, and I understand the conversation. But Tom Brady, once you won that seventh Super Bowl, I just, I really almost just don't see an argument anymore. You can argue that it's different eras and yada, yada, yada. I get it. But at the end of the day, there's been no other quarterback in the history of the NFL, not even quarterback if you want to talk about it, any other player that's ever been to 10 Super Bowl appearances and has the amount of playoff wins that he has. Now, part of that also is because he's been playing for so damn long. But another part of that also is because Tom Brady, he's just a phenomenal athlete. He's a person that, and when I say athlete, he obviously must have a little bit of athleticism, but he's not someone that, when you take a look at how fast he can run or how far, he can jump when it comes down to it or yada, yada, yada. He doesn't take, when it comes to the naked eye, he doesn't really come across as someone that, would be one of the greatest athletes of all time. But overall what I mean when I say that, sports participant or whatever you want to say, Tom Brady is probably the greatest NFL player within its history. In my opinion, it's either him and Jerry Rice because those are the only two players, in my opinion, that outweigh, pretty much every other player within the NFL's history. They're the only ones that when you take a look at their level, they're so far ahead of every other competitor at that position when it comes down to it that in my opinion, it's almost really not even close. It just is what it is. But Skip and Shannon, they're going to be talking about Mr. Tom Brady, and they're going to be begging the question, is Tom Brady the greatest sports participant of all time, at least that we have seen in American sports? And I think that that's a very interesting question. Of course, it is very difficult to make sports comparisons because they can be so different. But I think that there's still somewhat of an easy way to look at it. So it just is what it is. But anyways, Skip and Shannon, they're going to be talking about it. I'm going to tune in.
But it's not an easy because you look at over 22 seasons, he's been phenomenal. But I'm going to say no. I think he's had an unbelievable career. But what keeps me from saying no is the lack of individual accomplishments. I look at a guy like Wayne Gretzky, the great one.
Well, if we were to talk about actually individual accomplishments, and listen, we all know that Shannon Sharp, he has a little bit of an issue with Tom Brady. So it is what it is. Don't get me wrong. Even sometimes when Shannon has an issue with people, I think that he has what the hell's the word that I'm looking for? Whatever. He still has a rap overall for being someone logical and objective, or a knack for it, I guess is the word that I'm looking for. But when it comes down to it, we all know that Shannon Sharp, for whatever reason, has not liked Tom Brady. It just is what it is. Could maybe it be a part of because, he still wants to put John Elway in that conversation? Could it maybe be because he thinks that Tom Brady is a part of a different era that maybe is a little bit more watered down? Excuse me. Could it also be that Shannon Sharp maybe wishes that he could have played a little bit longer in his career while Tom Brady is still playing at 44 years old? Could be a mix of all those things. Could be just one or two of those things. I don't know. But at the end of the day, for whatever reason, Shannon Sharp has a real big problem with that of Tom Brady. It just is what it is. Or maybe he's another one of these Aaron Rodgers fans, because we all know that he's a major Aaron Rodgers fan, that believes that Tom Brady, that he was more built up by his head coach overall than, the talent that he actually was. But at the end of the day, Tom Brady, he is an all-time great quarterback. He is an all-time great sports participant. He is an all-time great athlete. There's overall no debate about that. Now, of course, certain people, like I said, they may come back to me and they may say, oh, well, you can't really say all-time great athlete because he's not really all around that athletic. Yes, but you people overall know what I mean. If you take a look at Stephen Curry, for example, Stephen Curry does not have the athleticism of a Russell Westbrook. He doesn't even have the athleticism of an Allen Iverson when it comes down to it. He didn't have the athleticism of a Derrick Rose. Stephen Curry would not even be within the top 30 or 50 athletes within the NBA's history if you just want to talk about how high or far they can jump and can they jump out of the gym and all sort of bullshit when it comes down to it. But Stephen Curry overall is one of the top athletes in the NBA's history. So you know what I mean. It just is what it is. So it's whatever. Tom Brady very clearly is one of the greatest athletes or sports participants, whatever you want to say it as, of all time. No doubt about it.
He won 9 MVPs. He won 8 in a row. He won 4 titles. He led the league in scoring 5 times. He led the league in assists 16 times. Jordan, 6 MVPs, finished in the top 3 10 times, 10 times first team All-NBA.
Well, actually, Michael Jordan, he only had 5 MVPs, 6 finals MVPs, but I get what you're saying.
LeBron, 4 MVPs, finished in the top 3 in MVP voting 11 times, 13 times.
LeBron James is down in that conversation, Shannon Sharp, and you know that. Stop trying to put your boy LeBron James in there. All right, LeBron James is nowhere near in the discussion overall. If you believe that Tom Brady is not in the discussion, then LeBron James is nowhere near this discussion. Now, with LeBron James, in terms of an athlete, is he overall, is he more athletic, than Tom Brady? Of course, obviously. But at the end of the day, if you want to talk about who's more dominant for their respective sport, it's Tom Brady, and it's really not even close. Because he was able to go to 10 Super Bowl appearances. Do you know how many quarterbacks in the NFL's history have 10 championship or 10 Super Bowl appearances? 0. It is what it is. Besides Tom Brady, he's the only one.
First team All-NBA. Brady has only been first team All-Pro 3 times in 22 seasons. And that was the seasons in which he won the MVP.
Yep.
And so for me, Skip, it's hard to argue, but I didn't really put a whole lot of Gretzky was the only one that I mentioned the titles because I believe titles is a team. But when we're talking...
Listen, what I'm going to say is this. If you want to talk about... Now, there's going to be certain people that say, well, we can't really compare individual and team athletes. Well, you know what? This is kind of where I disagree. To me, it's not necessarily that difficult to compare. And a certain amount of people, I don't know, they may disagree. All you have to take a look at in the sport is how dominant they are. Now, of course, you still have to include certain factors when it comes down to it, which sport maybe would be harder, what do you have to do, overall for this, yada, 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 yada. But listen, at the end of the day, we also have to take a look at, let's just take a look at Tom Brady's standards compared to everyone else, even if we want to compare him to that of a Michael Jordan or a Bill Russell or, a Novak Djokovic, because in my opinion, he's the greatest men's tennis player that I've personally ever seen, and he has the accomplishments and statistics to back it up as well as the championships, or the Grand Slams, whatever the hell you want to call them. If I'm comparing him to other athletes as well, boxing, which is the main sport that I like to talk about, Floyd Mayweather Jr., Manny Pacquiao, Sugar Ray Robinson, yada, 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 whoever else you want to put in that conversation. Muhammad Ali, of course, a lot of people would because Muhammad Ali, of course, has a very, very big cult of personality and a very big fan base. And, of course, he was debatably the greatest heavyweight of all time. Whoever else, you want to put in that conversation, Wayne Gretzky, and a certain amount of other guys. Tom Brady then has to be in that conversation. Michael Phelps, if you want to put him in there. Tom Brady has to be in that conversation because he is debatably the greatest for his sport, and one could debate that it's not particularly close. Now, I would, somewhat disagree. I would say that Jerry Rice and Tom Brady, that they're somewhat right there with each other, but I would say that Tom Brady may even get the slight edge over that of a Jerry Rice. I mean, like I said, certain people can say that Bill Belichick was a big part of the reason to why he made, so many Super Bowls with the Patriots, but listen, at the end of the day, has Bill Belichick really been able to do anything without Tom Brady? Now, I do think all in all that, more than likely that the Patriots could be Super Bowl contenders without Tom Brady. But does that necessarily mean that just because they can win a Super Bowl without Tom Brady and and with Bill Belichick, that Tom Brady just wasn't shit? Of course not. Tom Brady, of course, when you take a look at his statistics, when you take a look at his production, when you take a look at his arm talent, there's very few quarterbacks in the NFL's history that is going to have the all-around package as Tom Brady. Actually, scratch that. There is no quarterback within the NFL's history that has the full package that Tom Brady has.
About the greatest, like individual, I look at MVPs, first team, All NBA, All Pro. Obviously, hockey doesn't have that. They just
just to talk about the NBA real quick, I really don't take first All NBA too seriously sometimes. I mean, I remember one season where they ranked Damian Lillard above Stephen Curry. I think overall, just because Stephen Curry was with the Golden State Warriors and he had Kevin Durant on his team, I've never seen a season personally where I thought Damian Lillard deserved first team All NBA over that of Stephen Curry. So I really don't take first team All NBA too seriously.
have the MVP and things of that.
Don't get me wrong, it's still a great accomplishment to a degree, but you have to really take a look at it. Pro Bowls are another thing as well that also have to be held into accountability.
Nature. So for me, Skip, I'm gonna say no. Maybe if you want to talk about team success, he and Russell, I think it's harder to win.
Bill Russell, I don't even know. Now, Bill Russell, in my opinion, he was great for his day. A lot of people really try to underrate him, but I don't even think that Bill Russell is on the Tom Brady level.
In the NFL than any other league, Skip, because guess what? It's final. Ain't no series. I mean, who knows what would happen if Buffalo played, if Buffalo and KC,
Yeah.
Skip, if they had a 7-game series, who knows what would happen? Who knows what would happen with the Rams in Tampa? Who knows what would happen with it?
Well, I get what you're saying, Shannon, but I'm not really going to discredit Tom Brady because of that. That's like me going on to Floyd Mayweather Jr. and saying, well, you know what? If he was forced, if boxing wins were like the best out of 3, and you had to face, your opponent, like let's say Floyd Mayweather Jr. versus Manny Pacquiao. Now, of course, you can adjust, during the fight, just like you can adjust overall during a football game. But of course, the more preparation you have and the more time separated, the more of a chance your opponent has of beating you, the more time they have to prepare. So it just is what it is. So that's like me saying all in all, oh, well, Floyd Mayweather Jr., he's not debatably the greatest athlete of all time or up there with Michael Jordan and, Wayne Gretzky and Tom Brady because, he only gets one chance to defeat his opponents when it comes. Like, you have to take a look at the respective sports and say, okay, well, for how the sports is built when it comes down to it, what are they able to do? How dominant are they compared to their contemporaries? That's why, in my opinion, so many people, they always say, oh, well, it's so difficult to come up with these sports comparisons. I don't think it's that difficult. All you have to do is take a look at the sports, the way that they're built. Sure, there's certain differences when it comes down to it. All you got to do is understand the differences. You don't compare Tom Brady's MVPs 100% necessarily to Michael Jordan's MVPs. That's where a lot of people get it wrong. You take a look at their contemporaries in their own sports. Okay, Michael Jordan has 5 MVPs. How many people within the NBA's history have 5 MVPs and 6 championships and 6 finals MVPs and a Defensive Player of the Year award? Okay, Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady, they have 3 MVPs. How many quarterbacks have 3 MVPs, 7 Super Bowl championships, 5 Super Bowl MVPs, like 15, Pro Bowl appearances when it comes down to 3, first team All-Pro teams, yada, 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 yada. And on top of that, so many records. So that's why, in my opinion, when people always talk about, oh, it's so difficult to compare, cross sports, I don't think it's that difficult to compare at all. Because you don't compare Michael Jordan and Tom Brady, for example, necessarily to each other and say, okay, let's compare their MVPs, let's compare their Pro Bowl appearances. You have to take a look at their contemporaries. As long as it's a very decently competitive sport, a sport that is taken seriously and should be taken seriously, unlike, say, like the WNBA, for example. And I don't like to compare women and male athletes anyway. But when it comes down to, like I said, because, to me, they're just different. But at the end of the day, like I said, that's why, in my opinion, comparing cross sports, it's really not that difficult. It just is what it is. All you have to do is compare them to their contemporaries.
Everything that happened, everything would walk off this week.
Yeah.
What would happen? Basketball, you get hard to beat somebody. You know you're the best. If I beat you 4 out of 7 times, Skip, ain't no doubt. I can't get lucky, Skip. Ain't no walk-off shot. You ain't hitting no 4 walk-off shots.
No.
Well, right, Shannon, but a lot of people can also debate that, like I said, with Floyd Mayweather Jr., or Manny Pacquiao. It is what it is. You know, a lot of people can debate that with other individual sports. Novak Djokovic, for example, if he's facing off with Rafael Nadal, sure, there are 5 sets when it comes down to it, but you have a very little amount of time to adjust. In an NBA basketball game, when it comes down to it, you have the most amount of a time to adjust. So it is what it is. So, like I said, it can go either way. At the end of the day, you know, both defeating someone in a first, you know, belt kind of manner and defeating someone repeatedly or having to adjust differently each time, they can be looked at as both equally great. So we have to respect both sports for what they require.
Series. So for me, Skip, I'm going to say no. I put Gretzky, I put Jordan, I put LeBron. If you wanted to put, I don't know, can we do it?
LeBron's not up there, Shannon. Stop the bullshit. Come on. LeBron James, dude. The dude is 4-6 in the NBA Finals. Just stop.
Individuals.
And he's choked away some of the biggest games of his career. Don't get me wrong. It's not like LeBron James is just some, you know, Kirk Cousins or some shit. It's not like all in all, you know, he's just a complete loser. But come on, LeBron James, dude. Like, it's just stop.
Sports and say Tiger? Probably not, because the Tiger is an individual sport and it's all about him, no team. So I stuck to team sports and I said Gretzky, Jordan, LeBron.
Right, but even if we talk about individual sports, I really don't even think that is that hard to compare there either. I mean, you know, we all know who's on a different level in individual sports compared to everybody else. It just is what it is. When you take a look at tennis, you know who's up there. Rafael Nadal, Roger Federer, Novak Djokovic. Clear. Clear as day. Just is what it is. When you take a look at boxing, Floyd Mayweather Jr., Manny Pacquiao, Sugar Ray Leonard, you know, whoever the hell else you want to put in the top 10 of all time, you know, yada, yada, yada. You know, when it comes down to it, to me, it's not really that hard to compare. You know, now baseball, I don't really know shit about baseball, so I can't really comment on that. Of course, a lot of people would say Babe Ruth, but of course, Babe Ruth, he was not really around during where, you know, everyone was really allowed in the league. At least that's, you know, overall what I've researched. But when it comes down to, you know, like I said, to me, overall, if you're in a competitive league where everyone is pretty much allowed in there and it's highly, highly skilled, highly competitive, and Tom Brady is in that type of league, you know, then you have to be given the same amount of credit, in my opinion.
You just won't give it a rest. As this man fades into the sunset, you are dancing on his grave.
No, that's what you want me to do, Skip. You said you didn't want, he said he didn't want no farewell tour, so I got to keep it going.
Okay. This is just me, and maybe I'm caught up in the emotional
You
moment,
are.
but I got to tell you, this is one that ain't even close. I give you Gretzky. I'll even give you LeBron's longevity and all that he's accomplished over time, but...
Yeah, but all LeBron has told me that you've been around the NBA for almost 20 years, and all you could pull out was 4 NBA championships, even if you don't want to compare it to Bill Russell's 11 NBA championships, because that's a little bit different because they only had about 8 teams at the current moment in time, and I'm not sure how long the seasons were back then. I don't know if they had 82 games or what it was back then. I don't know, but... when it comes down to, like I said, so that was a little bit different. NFL championships back in the Bart Starr, Johnny Unitas era, you know, that was a little bit different. Tennis, when it comes down to, you know, when they got their first Grand Slams, you know, where not everyone where I believe where they, you know, where they were allowed to play against each other, that's something to where you can make a case. But when it comes down to it, like I said, if you're talking about all in all, you know, the sport overall that is highly, highly competitive when it comes down to it, and clearly has the greatest of competitions. I mean, Tom Brady is in an era when it comes down to where the roster turnover, your roster almost literally changes every single year because these teams overall, they don't have the money when it comes down to it usually to keep almost every single player on there because they have a salary cap. So what does that mean? Almost everywhere that Tom Brady has went, or almost every single year, no matter what the roster has been, I mean, Tom Brady has literally won Super Bowls with like 3 or 4 different rosters. Do you know how much adaptability and how much greatness that takes? Tom Brady is up there with anyone in terms of that, you know, in terms of the greatest sports participant of all time. He's in that conversation with anyone. I don't care what anybody says. He's up there, right up there with Michael Jordan. He's up there with Wayne Gretzky. He's up there with anyone. I don't care who it is.
I'm the biggest Jordan fan there ever was, and I have come to grips with the fact that Brady has eclipsed him just on sheer duration of greatness. It's after a while.
Listen, what I'll say is this. I'm not going to 100% say that Tom Brady, in my opinion, has surpassed that of a Michael Jordan or any of these other guys. But listen, at the end of the day, it's like this for me. Tom Brady is still very clearly in that class. There's no denying that.
I know he went to 6 finals and won 6 MVPs, but Brady has 7 Super Bowls. And when you look at the achievements tied to each one, he won the first 6 in New England with 6 game-winning drives in the fourth quarter overtime. That's preposterously great. And then he wins a 7th after choosing to go, shocking all of us, to Tampa Bay? Really? The Succaneers?
Well, let me say this. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, of course, they were not doing very well, but they were a secret contender. Tom Brady overall knew what he saw in them. So I'm not, this is the same narrative that LeBron James fans always try to pull out of their ass when it comes down to, oh my God, LeBron James just went to this team that wasn't shit when it came down to it, and then he just makes them a championship contender. Don't get me wrong. LeBron James, of course, he makes any team a championship contender because he is that great, but he needs help as well. People try to act like LeBron James just brings a bag of potato chips overall to LA or to a basketball team and he just immediately wins the finals. Bullshit. You know how much talent LeBron James has had in his career, and he's only won 4 out of the 10 championships that he's been to, and he's lucky that he even won that many? It is what it is.
The franchise that had the losingest record over its lifetime of any franchise in sports.
Right.
The lowest winning percentage in all of sports. He goes to the Succaneers, who were 7-9 the year before, in the middle of a pandemic. Brand new.
But what I will say is this, Tom Brady still does deserve a hell of a lot of credit because, in my opinion, does he deserve the main credit for winning that Super Bowl last year with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? He certainly deserves, in my opinion, at least 50% of the credit. Why? Because he was the only common denominator, in my opinion, to why they won the Super Bowl. Don't get me wrong, that's not me trying to say that, he did not have great talent around him. He had debatably the most talented roster in the NFL. But do you think that if it would have been another quarterback behind the Tampa Bay Buccaneers that they would have won that Super Bowl? In my opinion, absolutely not. Do you think Aaron Rodgers would have pulled it off? Highly doubt it. Do you think that even Patrick Mahomes would have pulled it off? Maybe. That's a big maybe. He could have. Maybe Josh Allen. Maybe a couple of others. But not a lot of quarterbacks could have been able to pull that off, especially against a team that was so inexperienced in the playoffs. Now, there were some players that did have playoff experience, like an Ndamukong Suh and Jason Pierre-Paul and Antonio Brown, yada, 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 yada. But I believe a lot of those guys, they never won a Super Bowl ring before. So Tom Brady was the main one that brought them over the hump. And on top of that, Bruce Arians, he never won a ring as a head coach. So it is what it is.
New coach, while playing on a torn MCL, not the hard.
Although, let me say this, that's not me trying to LeBron James, the situation, and basically say, oh, he never played with a great coach in Tampa Bay. Bruce Arians obviously is a great coach. But, Bruce Arians and Tom Brady, they teamed up and they won each other a ring. In Tom Brady's case, he won another ring. In Bruce Arians' case, he won his first ring as a head coach, I believe.
Hardest thing to do because it's ACL's the one.
Right.
The MCL you can sort of get away with.
Yeah,
a lot of people don't even get them fixed.
I just watched Francis Ngannou
Okay.
unify the heavyweight title with
Yep.
a torn MCL
Okay.
in UFC.
Okay, but Brady did do that. And he lifted the Succaneers to a Super Bowl in their first go-around together. That's just impossibly great. And then this year at age 44, Pro Football Focus says that he was far and away the winner of the MVP race, statistically, and in grading him from game to game.
What I'll say is this, I gave Aaron Rodgers the early MVP, nod. But after the way that he completely blew and came up so short against the 49ers team, that in my opinion, at best, should have only had a 30% chance, you can very much argue that Tom Brady now deserves the MVP.
And all he did in his swan song game was score 24 unanswered points on the Rams. He got help from his defense, and he got help from the Rams. I give you that. 2 unforced errors by the Rams and 2 forced errors by the Bucs. I give you that. But he kept cashing and scored 24 unanswered points in the second half, threw for 125 yards in the fourth quarter with one hand tied behind his back because he didn't have Godwin and AB and Cyril Grayson and Bashard Perriman. And he didn't have his right tackle, and they were down to their third string right tackle, who happened to be the backup undrafted free agent rookie.
And that's why I believe it's about a 50-50 shot that Tom Brady retires. I think that there's a good chance that more than likely he's probably going to return. Because I just don't see Tom Brady. Some of these, athletes, they really need to get almost killed before overall, before they retire. It was the same thing with Manny Pacquiao. Manny Pacquiao was 43 years old, and he had to finally lose to a fighter that, in my opinion, would have not ever been in his league when it came down to it had he been at his peak. Now, Yordenis Ugas is a very decent fighter, but I don't view him as an A-plus fighter. It just is what it is. He's a decent fighter, though. But Manny Pacquiao, when I just took a look at him in that fight, the legs were just no longer there. It is what it is. And, Manny Pacquiao, if he would have won that fight, he would have continued fighting and fighting and fighting until overall, his family said, listen, Manny, you're 50 years old when it comes down to it, or however old he would have been. It's time to, give it a rest and spend time with your family, or, it would have been, till he finally got knocked out or stopped or his ass completely whooped by Errol Spence Jr. or Terrence Bud Crawford. Tom Brady, in my opinion, he's very similar. Maybe after losing this playoffs, maybe he said, you know what, might as well, leave someone on top. But I doubt it. I think Tom Brady will be back.
Guard, and it was hard because they're up against the fiercest pass rush in pro football, and he got them all the way back to 27 all. And that's the way, I fear, it ended for him, but that's pretty great. So my point to you is, even I look back, and you disagree with this, but I say that first Eli Super Bowl, Belichick's defense let him down. You can say, well, won him a lot of games too. I give you that. But
I think, what I'll say is this. I'm not really going to blame Bill Belichick's defense. That was a very competitive game. It is what it is,
When push came to shove, Brady drove on the New York Football Giants.
Each new year brings new opportunities to serve others and earn their respect by becoming the top brand in new vehicle quality in the automotive industry. Start the new year with the lineup of Ram trucks built to serve.
Giants, 65 yards for a touchdown, hit Randy Moss with a little touchdown pass that made it 14-10 with 2 minutes left in the first Eli Super Bowl. And what happened? Belichick's defense allowed Eli to go 75 yards, not for a field goal. They needed a touchdown, and they got a touchdown to win the game 17-14. And then in the Eagles Super Bowl, it was just a debacle of a disaster. How can you give up 41 points to Nick Foles, the backup quarterback, and Brady threw...
Well, that was an extremely talented offense. But, Shannon, with that bullshit that he always says about Aaron Rodgers, oh, well, the defense, they're scoring 40 or 50, like all this other bullshit. Aaron Rodgers' defense is on average. They're not allowing anything over, 31 points. Now, of course, 31 points is still not a great, points that you want to allow. But how many games really, have the defenses really fucking, just blew the game? It usually was Aaron Rodgers. It just is what it is.
An all-time playoff record in that Super Bowl, 505 yards, put up 33 and lost 41-33, while Malcolm Butler was mysteriously, inexplicably benched.
Right.
I don't get it. But those two, I believe Belichick cost Brady 2 more Super Bowls.
And plus the thing, Skip, I didn't even list any baseball players. Because it's just so hard if you start throwing in Babe Ruth with the MVPs and all this. So I just stuck to the sports that obviously I probably should have went to baseball. Do you believe Brady was a better player in football than Barry Bonds was at baseball?
He just achieved more.
I really don't know shit about Barry Bonds, but you can't really have Barry Bonds in that conversation, in my opinion, because he never won shit. It is what it is. Now, Barry Bonds, I believe, was a several-time MVP. But you can never be in that conversation, in my opinion, if you were never, if you're a baseball, player, you can never be in that conversation if you never won a World Series championship. It just is what it is. I'm sorry.
And again, what jars your psyche is when you think of Tom Brady running the ugliest 40 ever at the Combine, it's hard for you to compute the fact that guy had the greatest career ever. Well, he's not a poor athlete. He's a pretty good athlete because he did get drafted by Montreal to play baseball.
Right.
But
and he probably could play. He probably shot hoops in high school.
I don't know about that. I don't know if I can go there. But
you imagine Tom Brady in high school dunking on the rims, breaking the glass boards like Shaq.
But I can go to baseball, and I can definitely go to football. He played this position with his mind and his body and his feet, obviously, and his accuracy, and had above average arm strength, obviously, and it never went.
Actually, he has very good arm strength. His arm strength is very, very underrated. It's almost like Floyd Mayweather Jr.'s chin. No one talks about Floyd Mayweather Jr.'s chin and how overall pretty damn good it is within boxing, because when you really take a look at the punches that he fought, and faced, and, some of the hits that he got hit with, even though he was very good with the movement and defensively responsible, you take a look at some of those shots that some of those guys landed, and it was like, damn, I can't believe Floyd took that shot. Tom Brady, let me tell you this, man, He can fling that football down the field about 70, maybe even plus yards.
To me, but
At least at his best.
he kept doing it in the clutch so many times that he was 35-12 in playoff games. That's just, you know how hard it is.
Yeah, you're probably not going to ever see that again.
No, you're just not going to see.
Excuse me. I agree. Excuse me. But overall, that's what I meant. You're never going to see a playoff record like that again. Now, will a lot of people overall say that partially is due to Bill Belichick? Yeah, partially. But once again, what is Bill Belichick's playoff record without Tom Brady? It don't look too great. It just is what it is. You know what I mean? Now, do I think that Bill Belichick, once he finds a decent quarterback replacement, do I think that his playoff record will look very, very good? Yeah. Do I think he's going to win 6 Super Bowls again? Nope. It just is what it is.
Not that accumulation.
And all we knew is that if he ever got the ball back with a minute left, you're just saying, okay.
Right.
And I saw him in an AFC Championship game at Mahomes. We're going to talk about, are they going to change the overtime rule? Well, this was the classic one. And he gets pushed back 3 straight times facing 3rd and 10 in overtime. And he goes to Edelman, and he goes to Edelman, and he goes to Gronk. And all of a sudden, they drive it all the way down the field and score because he converted 3 straight 3rd and 10s. You want to talk about all-time clutch? I mean, the clutchness is beyond Jordan only because he did it so many more times than Jordan did.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the thing, Skip, is that you look at the longevity in which he's...
What I'll say about Tom Brady is this. When you want to talk about some of the clutchest athletes of all time, you know, and in my opinion, it's not really that hard to compare when you talk about clutchness because, once again, a lot of people will say, oh, well, you can't really make cross-sports comparisons. All you have to do is take a look and, you know, maybe it's not as simple as I'm making it, but I don't know, in my mind at least, it's simpler than what a lot of people make it. Just take a look at how many of these people overall came up bigger than almost anyone, you know, compared to anyone else. When you take a look at Floyd Mayweather Jr., I've never seen another boxer, at least in my lifetime, come up as big as what Floyd Mayweather Jr. did in his career. When you want to talk about Novak Djokovic in terms of tennis, I've never seen anyone come up as clutch as what Novak Djokovic can come up in his career. You know, when you want to talk about overall maybe basketball, I've never seen anyone, at least, you know, watching footage, I've never seen anyone come up as clutch usually as what a Michael Jordan could do. So it just is what it is. And Tom Brady for football, of course.
He played. And like I said, it's just hard because I just think that we say receiver is a dependent position, but the quarterback is the most dependent position in football because you're dependent on the offensive line, you're dependent on your guys to catch the football, you're dependent on the running back. So that's the most dependent, not wide receiver. We got to stop that saying a wide receiver is a dependent position. No position is more dependent than the quarterback.
Okay. That's true.
I would somewhat see what you're saying, Shannon, but in my opinion, every position is somewhat dependent. You know, a wide receiver is going to benefit from a greater quarterback, and a quarterback is going to benefit from a greater receiver. But how you tell overall how great, between just a good receiver or just a good QB and an all-time great receiver and an all-time great QB is consistency across the line, no matter what quarterback or no matter what receiver they tend to have. And Tom Brady and Jerry Rice, for example, they have those numbers, they have that consistency.
It's a good point.
But Skip,
but to finish up your point, I get what you're saying. Look, I covered Barry Bonds.
Right.
I know.
Right.
He was the greatest player I ever saw because he was the greatest hitter I ever saw, and he won Gold Gloves in Pittsburgh.
Right.
What did he win? 8?
8.
Yeah, 8 Gold Gloves. Well, stop it.
Right.
He was free.
Now, some people overall may tell me, well, you know, when it comes down to it, you know, you say that Barry Bonds never won a World Series, but, you know, there's so many different factors. Now, listen, I don't know a whole lot about baseball when it comes down to it, so maybe I should not necessarily commentate on that one as often. Because, of course, I know if I were to take a look at soccer, you know, and if I were to take a look at Lionel Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo, I'm sure that there's certain players that I would put above them that have won, you know, the FIFA World Cup that, you know, of course, Messi and Ronaldo, they've never been able to win that. But, you know, I don't know. I would have to take a look at that a little bit longer. But baseball, in my opinion, it seems a little bit different because the majority of the greatest players of all time that I know, I'm pretty sure that they've won, you know, World Series. It just is what it is, you know. I know a lot of players, all in all, that were overall able to win the World Series. Barry Bonds, you know, he has all these MVPs, but, you know, you never won a World Series. Now, maybe that's not completely his fault, but like I said, I'm not going to commentate on baseball a whole lot.
Right. And I get the steroid accusation. I get all that. But I don't even care.
Even before that.
Way before that. Greatest I ever saw was Barry Bonds. So if I do vacuum Barry Bonds and Tom Brady, by the way, they went to the same high school.
You right, San Mateo, huh?
Yeah. What's that?
San Mateo?
In San Mateo. It's brother. Well,
Yeah, okay.
I can't remember what it was. But they went to the same one. Yeah,
Right.
same Catholic high school. Okay, but the point is, if I go vacuum Barry Bonds, vacuum Tom Brady, I'm like laughing at Tom Brady because you don't belong in the same sentence with him.
Right.
Agreed.
Right?
Right.
Wayne Gretzky versus Tom Brady on athletic. No.
Right.
It's Gretzky.
Right.
I get this. Achievements, clutch achievements, there's never been anything like
Yeah.
this.
I don't. But see,
How would someone agree with that?
I mean, yeah, Skip. I mean, it's close. I mean, you're splitting hairs, but I think because the lack, and I say, I'm just basically not. Skip, if we just like, okay, winner, it's hard to say Brady isn't the greatest winner.
Okay.
I might say I might even take him over Mr.
Right, but he's not even just the greatest winner, Shannon. Like, that's kind of a backhanded compliment. That's like when people overall call Floyd Mayweather Jr. like the greatest defensive fighter ever. Take a look at the facts. Tom Brady doesn't just, have 7 Super Bowls. Like this is what I always try to, say. Like, when I have a certain argument or a certain debate with one of my friends or a certain person, and they always try to say, well, Peyton Manning, in my opinion, he's above Joe Montana because Peyton Manning has so many records. Those records are great, but what the hell does it mean if you can't come up big in the big game moments? You understand what I'm saying? It'd be different if Joe Montana was like a Troy Aikman or something like that, someone who's never won an MVP, I believe. But Joe Montana, at the end of the day, he was a 2-time MVP, I believe. He won 4, Super Bowls when it came down to it. 3-time Super Bowl MVP, I believe. So it's not like Joe Montana is just some scrub. You know what I'm saying? So it's like you really have to learn overall. You have to know how to compare things.
Russell for the simple facts.
Like, there's a difference overall in comparing, like, Nick Foles, for example, and, like, Dan Marino. And we can sit here and say, oh, well, Nick Foles, he's a Super Bowl champion, so, all in all, he's above Dan Marino. No, of course not, because Nick Foles, in terms of consistency and play and talent, he's not going to win a Super Bowl overall in very many environments. Eli Manning, for example, is not greater than Dan Marino. Ben Roethlisberger, in my opinion, is not greater than Dan Marino when it comes down to it. But then when you talk about the other quarterbacks that can be compared on a similar level, like Aaron Rodgers, Brett Favre, Patrick Mahomes, Russell Wilson, Drew Brees, all those guys, Steve Young, all of a sudden then we have a debate. So it is what it is.
He has like a game 7. Well, you lose game. You in the playoff, you lose one game. There is no game 7. There is no tomorrow. The finality of it, and I don't believe you're ever going to see, because the most games you can play in a football playoff season is 4. If you're the wild card, you'll play 4 games.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
So you get in basketball, Skip. I get 4 chances at you. You get 1, and it's over. And he's what you say, 35.
Right, but Shannon, come on. If Tom Brady has won 7 Super Bowls and been to 10 Super Bowls in his career, he's just caught his opponent by surprise each and every single time? Like, come on. That's an excuse in my opinion. It is what it is. There's obviously some sort of consistency there.
12?
Yeah.
Nobody's ever going to play that many playoff games
No,
again.
they're not.
No. It's not going to happen. All those yards he has, all that. Some of those numbers, Skip, I don't know. These guys are getting an earlier start now with that extra game, Skip. That's going to help, because that's going to be an extra.
Shit, if I were Tom Brady, I wouldn't stop overall until my arm completely gave out. If I were Tom Brady, because I overall have a decent, competitive side to me as well. And, I don't usually give up on something, especially I'm very decently good at it. When it comes down to it competitively, I ain't going to give up on it until I know that, it's done. It's over.
2 to 3 touchdowns. You project that over, 15 years.
Yeah.
But he had an unbelievable career, Skip. But it's, I like I said, if he'd had like 5 or 6 first team All Pros.
Well, see, he's the
right. But how many quarterbacks have 5 or 6, first team All Pros? You know what I'm saying? So it is what it is. And if you want to compare him to defensive players, that's a little bit of a different standard, because I don't, defensive players, they usually can make first team All Pros, at least usually a little bit easier overall than what the quarterbacks can. Because the quarterback position is the most competitive position in all of football.
flip side Aaron Rodgers, because he transcended in the postseason as opposed to the regular season.
Correct.
Thank you for watching. You can subscribe here.
But anyways, that's really about it for this video. I just thought that was very particularly interesting. To overall put my answer out there, do I believe that Tom Brady, do I believe that he is the greatest sports athlete of all time? What I'll say is this: I don't think that's necessarily definitive, but I think that he's certainly in the conversation. He's up there with any of the greatest athletes that I've ever seen: Floyd Mayweather Jr., Manny Pacquiao. Who knows? Maybe Canelo in terms of boxing. Maybe he can crawl into that conversation as well. I don't know. In terms of baseball, Barry Bonds. Of course, certain people may put him in that conversation. I don't know. I don't really watch much of baseball. Tennis, Novak Djokovic, probably. Track and field, of course, Usain Bolt, yada, 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 Wayne Gretzky, Michael Jordan, whoever the else you want to put him in there with. Tom Brady, in my opinion, he's up there with any of those guys. But anyways, that's really about it for this conversation. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll talk to you all later.